Hi, I'm Andy from SuiteAdditions, and the highest and best use for my business is second suites and garden suites.
Thanks for tuning into the Highest and Best Use Real Estate podcast, where we talk about techniques to optimize your land, structure, skill sets, and time, as well as the highest and best use principles to make your business more profitable, productive, and efficient. I'm your host, Ryan Carr, reminding you that good deals are found, great deals are created. Today, the man, Andy Tran, is on the show.
My name is Andy Tran. I run SuiteAdditions, and we focus on densification strategies, really focusing on second suites / coach houses or ADUs. For about 7 or 8 years now. Part of our business day to day is working with investors, also homeowners. Basically, it's a great way for people to add housing and really just figuring out ways to kind of create wealth for themselves long term, right? So it really works well with a lot of the investment strategies that are already existing. So it's really just kind of one thing that they've added on to add more housing, to really boost that cash flow. So it's funny because I kind of got into this by accident.
The accident story. Everybody's got the accident story.
Okay. I mean, like I was a home inspector back in the day.
No shit, I didn't know that.
I was in architecture, and then I left architecture. I got into IT, and then got out of that.
Yeah.
Got into home inspections. And the funny thing is, when I was in home inspections, I learned more about houses and architecture than when I actually went to architecture school, right? Because everything was very hands-on when we started doing home inspections, learning about systems and components. And then when I kind of combined that with investing, I had to go and look at properties, and then I got into the renovations, hiring trades, hiring contractors, doing a lot of the work myself. Through that process, I really kind of learned, the whole aspect of construction, investments, houses.
Yeah. You would have seen some crazy stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I've inspected like 1,500 houses.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
Done a bunch of energy audits, and of course, just looking at so many properties as investments.
Gosh. The energy audits.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, like the most inefficient process. It was like getting the energy audit done. I think was always a benefit. I did a few, but it was always such a grind to actually get it done, and then wait for the check, and then like go through the whole thing where they put the fan in the door. It was just the money that you got back almost wasn't even worth making the phone call. Was your experience the same, or was it better? Tell me it was better than mine.
I don't know. There was a lot of issues surrounding it, right? A lot of administration issues, because there was a lot of back and forth with the government as well. Okay. So you would have the energy auditor company communicate with a homeowner, and then from there, that company had to communicate with the government. So there was a lot of kind of back and forth, and as we know, like communicating with the government is not the easiest thing, right?
Slow.
Doesn't matter which which department you're dealing with. So it was definitely interesting.
So home inspector to getting into the real estate space, how did you make that accidental transition? Yeah,
so as I was in home inspections, I was I started getting into investing, but I was still working full time as an inspector, and then I moved into the education side. So I was training home inspectors, I was creating educational content, and so all that information, all that learning, especially when it came to second units, because I was educating realtors, I was educating homeowners on what they can do with their existing property. But all of that was pro bono. Like all of that was just part of my job, explaining, doing research, doing my own house back in 2010, doing that legal duplex.
Was that your first one?
That was my first one, 2010. And so with that experience, I just said, hey, you know what? These people want to know, like, can they rent this place out legally and not worry about neighbors, not worry about tenants?
So they would ask you as the home inspector.
Yeah. So as I did that for 3-4 years, I'm like, hey, you know what? Maybe there's a business here. And so that's why I just kind of started the consulting business while I was still working at the job. And then as that ramped up and got busy, I reached out to investors, realtors, and say, hey, you know what, I'm happy to provide any information. I'm happy to come to your office and do a talk to discuss it. And then slowly there was just so much demand. I said, you know what, I think I need to do this full time. So that was 2015. And then really jumped into it, and it's just been like, nonstop ever since. Like we've been working 50 to 70 projects with clients every year. And then our own, we have a handful of projects, ourselves as well. Yeah.
Even back during that time, early 2010s, home inspection days for you. Yeah. That's when home inspections were actually happening.
Yeah.
And they eventually they just kind of got phased out because the market got so competitive.
Exactly.
So it's a good thing you made the jump. Like I would think home inspectors are struggling. I don't know.
Yes, absolutely. A lot of home inspectors were. I mean, I was fortunate where we worked for a company with a brand name, so they had that they had that recognition, and also they were doing a lot of pre-listing inspections, right? So before the property would go on the market, so the listing agent would say, I want to get as many offers as possible. Yeah. Now, if we get our Carson Dunlop,
here's a binder,
to do the inspection, there's going to be more people that feel more comfortable that, hey, you know what, they've identified, 3 or 4 things.
Yeah.
It's expected. We're going to budget for that,
Yeah.
right? So it was still okay.
So the accidental jump, where did that come in?
Basically, the accidental jump was me realizing, like, basically there was a demand for.
Oh, that was the
second
accidental
units.
jump.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So when I saw that demand and I tested it out, right? I didn't leave the job. Like, I don't recommend to anyone just leave their job without anything. So I saw that there was the opportunity, and when I left the job, that was when I freed up my time, and things really started picking up, and then basically was just being on a hamster wheel after that.
Does that freak you out when you see people online that are saying, like, social media, YouTube, whatever, quit your job and tell your boss he's terrible and start your own thing? Does that freak you out? That freaks me out a little bit when people say that without a really solid plan.
Well, it definitely freaks me out because at the time I was already, like, married with a kid, right? So I had my first kid in 2012, and when I left my job, he was only 2-3 years old. My wife's not working.
Right.
So for me, it's actually not even something I would even consider.
Right.
So I think it really depends on where you are in life, right? I don't want to say, anybody should or shouldn't do something. It really depends on their circumstances. If you're a young person, if you're, a teenager or your 20s and you're living at home, sure. You know what?
Go gung-ho.
Go do it. Like, whatever. Like, test it all out, right? Learn fast, fail fast. And
because your downside risk is mitigated.
Yeah, right? You can live on rice and beans for, like, 10 years, right?
But
you can't do
lifestyle.
that when you have a family, right?
So your first duplex, you did that, you mentioned that. How did you transition then into, like, operating a full business that you have now, 70 some odd projects? Like did that just kind of come organically because people needed the service, or did you market for this? How did this grow as a business owner?
Yeah, I would say it's a combination of organic and also pushing out as much information as I can. So really, right from the beginning, I recognized the value in information and giving away as much information as possible. So I started very early with doing blog posts. Yeah. And so the blog posts, I started posting them on Facebook groups and, trying not to spam too many people, but slowly kind of build up my email list that way. Yeah. And then after that, starting doing some YouTube content, things like that. And we do get, and of course, all the social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. And over time, I think people just saw and recognized that we were providing information. There was some sort of trust and maybe some authority there where people would say, hey, you know what, I'm going to do this anyways. They feel that we've had enough projects under our belt that they're comfortable in pursuing our company to help them, basically.
Where do you spend your time as a business owner?
Oh.
How do you spend your day to be as efficient as possible?
Yeah, so it depends on when you ask me that question, right? So like, like a couple of years ago, it was really just doing everything, right? As with all entrepreneurs, you just kind of do everything. Yeah. And so slowly, fortunately, my wife, Sue, she's at home with the kids, and so I transitioned her to help me with a lot of the paperwork, admin, bookkeeping. So I was able to transition out of that. And then in terms of doing the actual permit drawings, I did everything at the beginning, and then I was able to find somebody like a full-time contractor to help me, and then I also have some freelance designers and drafters that help. Yeah. Right. And then lately we have Deshaun join us, who reached out to me saying that he wanted to learn everything he can about real estate. Yeah. And he has a set of skills, which is social media and videography. Like, he's done like 1,000 wedding videos.
No way.
And I said, okay, you know what? You're the person I need.
Hang on here. Yeah, come on board.
Together. Yeah. So he's come on board. He's been great and really eager to learn. And we've actually partnered on projects together as well. And now he's actually helping with the project management side. And he's still helping with the content creation. Yep. Although, as we kind of grow, we're going to be bringing in some new folks to help us with that, some younger people to help us with some of that content creation as well.
Interesting. Yeah. How do you see the content creation side of the business evolving? Like, where would you take it from here?
More quantity, really just having that consistency.
Just volume, right? Keep pumping it out kind of thing? Interesting.
So I've recently listened to some, content creators, and they said that, you really have to get enough out there in consistency, right? So, our consistency was every week we would try to either put out a long form video or like a blog post, and then, repurpose that content and putting out on some of the other places. Yeah. And we see people who reach out to us and go to our website and they'll say, we'll say, where did you find out about us? Yeah. And a lot of times it was, a realtor recommended, but sometimes it'll be like YouTube, which is kind of cool. Whenever I see someone that says they found me through YouTube, that's awesome.
Because it's like, motivating to keep making content.
Yeah, exactly. So we actually do the content. We put ad dollars behind it. So when somebody actually goes through there, it's kind of cool.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. In terms of how the business is functioning today, what does it look like today? How has it evolved over the years to become what it is?
Well, I mean, I have a long way to go. So when you say to become what it is, to me, it's like, oh man, it's nowhere near where I want it to be, right?
Okay. So then let's do this.
Right.
Where is it today versus maybe where you want it to be in the future?
I would say I'm happy and I'm pretty grateful as to where I am right now, of course, cool. Right? And I definitely want to get to a certain level in terms of a revenue stream, the consistent amount. Mm-hmm. And I really want to be able to take all of this information and package it and be able to work with other folks in a similar situation where they want to get into the consulting and the design side of things. Yep. Within the GTA, outside of the GTA, really all across clients, Ontario.
As clients or as business owners?
Actually, as business owners.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So initially, our business, and it's of course this is still going to be the bread and butter of our business, which is B2C, right? Business to consumer. So the consumer is going to be investors and homeowners. Mm-hmm. But one of our goals is also to create a business to business product where we've taken all of our lessons, all of our skills and experience, and package it in a way where I can bring someone on board and say, hey, you know what? Well, you don't have to do exactly, but if you follow this system. Right. And obviously you have to do it in a manner that is congruent with how you do business. Yeah. But, you can follow this system and be able to, build a business and make multiple six figures, even as a small business owner. It could be just you by yourself. It could be you with a partner. Mm-hmm. It's really up to you. Right. So once we have a certain consistency, which is what we're working on right now, and we are seeing that progress, then we can basically take that information and help other folks. Because I really believe that, it's the whole saying, right? Like, instead of giving people fish, you teach them how to fish.
It's true.
And if they have that motivation and they have that drive to make something, then they can definitely do it. But we want to speed things up for them with a process instead of them having to kind of start from scratch.
Yeah.
They learn our lessons. That's really what it's about. Like, I learn from you. You learn from others, and it's just we're all.
I've learned from you,
other, right?
I've learned from you and all your friends and all your colleagues and stuff.
Likewise. I mean, like we all learn together. That way, we don't have to kind of do everything over again.
Yeah.
And I mean, what you're doing and what I'm doing with densification and housing, it's a great strategy. Like we have the wind on our back in terms of the industry. Now it's just a matter of someone having the passion to be able to do it, and then they can kind of take it to wherever they want to go with it.
Isn't it interesting to see the industry unfold and evolve with, like, whether it was COVID or whether it was financing or the change in the bank rules or intensification or like all of these things? It's something new every day, every month, every year. Like 10 years ago, it was the basement apartment. That was the big ticket. That was the new thing, right? Basement apartments existed, but I mean, they were typically non-legal. And now it's like the basement apartment's the new whatever. Then it became coach houses. Now coach houses is like the next step in intensification. Yeah. Where do you see the coach house thing going?
I think we're at, like, in terms of coach houses, I mean, some people will call them garden suites or
garden suites,
ADUs.
What do you call it? What do you prefer?
I like garden suites.
Yeah, okay.
Because I'm in Toronto, and so basically that's the official name in Toronto.
Is it?
But the official name in Ontario is additional residential unit.
Right.
The rest of the country in the U.S. calls them accessory dwelling. So there's like a million names. Yeah. Please, folks, do not create another name for them. There's so many.
Didn't you? I saw on your social media, this is like, a year or two back. Yeah, you went to some seminar in the States, and you came up with a list of all the different things that you could call an ADU.
There's like 65 items.
There's a ton of them. Yeah. So funny. So dig through Andy's social media and find that list.
Yeah. So I think that with okay, let's just call them coach houses. So with coach houses, we are right now where we were with second suites, basement apartments, like 2011, 2012. Like, the policy just came into place. Yeah. People are not like really looking at them as opportunities. Like, when I started investing in 2010 in single family houses, I was able to rent out my whole house and still cash flow, and
because
it still made sense, right? Like, I would rent the whole house for $1,600 because I bought it for $230,000.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But then, like, after that, everybody would essentially have to duplex them, add second units in order for the numbers to work. Mm-hmm. And so now we're seeing, obviously there's a pullback recently, but we're seeing that now you have to be more creative. You have to start adding a third unit, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, all the other factors, all the other external factors, immigration, like not enough shortage of housing, all of that sort of stuff just really drives that. And so I see the next 10 years, honestly, as a really good opportunity to get into this before everybody really jumps at it. I would say not even, I would say next 5 years is you can still probably buy property without you competing with another person where they're going to be looking at the same thing. And I can give you an example of a property I bought yesterday. So
yeah. So okay, so let's do that. So what makes a good opportunity, or maybe this is a good
time to talk about. Really look at the property and say, highest and best use. What can you do with it, right? Look holistically, right? Can you sever it and build something? Can you add in a second unit? The first lowest hanging fruit would be add in a second unit, basement. Other than your typical flip stuff, which is like cosmetics, curb appeal, all that sort of stuff. You want to cover all that, and then the next thing is second unit, and then now we're looking at the garden unit, which is kind of the other item, right? And then beyond that would be like see is it possible to sever? And I really would look at the severance as really like a bonus.
Okay.
I don't think people should. And this might be too much of a broad statement, but in general, if let's say you don't have a whole lot of experience, like someone like yourself,
right,
to go and buy a property, and you're expecting that you're going to be able to sever this property, you could be in for a world of hurt if you're not able to do it. Because if you're running your numbers expecting that's
based on that being there,
I would rather look at it as a bonus and make sure that my plan B, C, and D still work, and I'm not going to lose money. Right. So that's the way I look at it.
Rule one, don't lose money.
Yeah, don't lose money. Right? It's Warren Buffett's line, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So I would say look and see what you can potentially do.
Yep.
And when it comes to the coach houses, that's something that not a lot of people are looking at right now. So you can just look at the listing itself. The listing will say, like sometimes it'll say, potential coach house, potential laneway suite.
Right.
And then you might know that the seller might be targeting a certain type of investor or developer.
So they would have that intuitively in their mind, thinking if an investor can see that they're going to be able to build one of these, maybe we'll get more.
Yeah, they might price it accordingly. But I would say, 99% aren't doing that, right? So as long as if the property fits in terms of what you're looking for, then it's something that you should definitely run the numbers and see if it makes sense for you.
Yeah. Okay. Tell us about this deal. What'd you get?
So I bought a property in Toronto, and it's on the Danforth subway line, right? So that was, to me, that was a big thing.
Subway line bonus.
Yeah, subway line bonus, and the prices have gone down substantially, and there wasn't that much interest in it.
Really?
And it actually had a detached garage that looked really bad in the pictures. Right, so it had some weird red stucco, and they didn't indicate at all that it was a concrete block structure. And so I went and saw the property, and I said, "This is I checked the walls, everything was nice and plumb, and everything." I was like, "Okay, you know what? I can use this structure as a laneway house." There's actually a laneway behind there as well.
Oh my gosh!
And so that was totally not priced into that property. So I was comparing that property versus another property that sold just back in July, I guess 3 months ago. And it was $400,000 more. The interior was a lot nicer on that one. They spent money on the kitchens and things like that. But I figured, I can probably get it to that same level with, $50,000, right? And I was able to get it for $400,000 less.
Yeah.
And there was no mention of this detached garage that can be like a 2-bedroom coach house.
Yeah.
Right on the subway line.
That'd be a good sized garage then.
It's a 2-car garage.
600 square feet?
It's about 500 square feet.
Nice.
So it's 500 square feet. So, we can make it into, especially if you're downtown Toronto on the subway line, people aren't expecting master en-suites, right? Right? So if you have 2 bedrooms that are 100 square foot each, that's good. Decent.
Yeah.
Right?
Huh.
So
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so slab on grade, is it full footing or is it slab on grade?
It's slab on grade, but because it's a concrete block structure, most likely there would have been some footings that are there.
Awesome.
So one of the things that, and we can talk about this later, is the garage conversions. We're actually doing a bunch of those projects where we're converting garages. And just one point about that is that garages are not heated spaces, right?
Right.
So if you do an inspection on that garage, right, have an inspector, have an engineer assist you. If it's in good shape and it's been there for a decade or two, it's a pretty good indication that
it's probably not going to move.
The frost and things haven't affected it, and then you can start and utilize that structure for an additional house.
So let's go down that road. Let's talk about it. So if somebody's looking at a garage, what should they be looking at?
So first thing is structurally, right? Is this garage leaning? Right, that's probably the first thing.
Some of them are,
Yeah, some of them are. If they're leaning, it may not make sense.
Oh, yeah.
You may have to kind of tear it down and rebuild. Generally speaking, if it's a CMU, like a concrete masonry unit garage, right, like a concrete block garage or a brick garage, those are going to be, better built. Right?
You're talking about the walls?
The walls. The walls. They're going to have probably a proper footing under there.
They'd be nice and quiet too.
Yeah.
Compared to a stick frame building.
Yeah.
Nice and quiet.
Well, that's what people want, right?
In Toronto, especially.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Okay.
And the one benefit of a garage conversion to a coach house is that if it was built legally at the time, so let's say 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever, if it was built legally with permits at that time, if you're converting it now to a coach house, most municipalities will not require you to comply with the bylaws as it is read right now. So, for example, if you were to build a coach house now, you would have to have, let's say, setback requirements from the lot line. You would have to have separation requirements from the house. There may be height restrictions and things like that. But if it's existing, then you're not subject to any of that. You can basically just comply with the building code. You have to get a building permit, obviously. You have to insulate it. You have to get all the services and utilities to the unit. But you're not required to, say, move it back by 3 feet or something like that. Right? So that's the benefit of finding something that's existing.
If you're closer than 1.2 meters to a lot line, do you need a fire-rated wall?
Yes.
Of some sort? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I knew you were going to ask me that question.
I don't know. I'm curious.
Yeah, I'm sure you experienced it. So if you are in closer than, 4 feet, roughly, 1.2 meters.
I work in feet. I've never used a metric tape measure in my whole life.
Oh, man.
Like if somebody said, cut me a 2x4, 1.6 meters long, I'd be like, what the hell is that?
Oh.
Like, I don't know. Give me an 8-footer. You know what I mean? I can't work in meters.
I have to think in both, especially when you go planning, when you go to committee, you got to convert everything metric.
Yeah.
And then when you convert it back, it just conveniently goes into like a 2x4.
Yeah, I know. Simple. Yeah. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, so
regarding
fire-rated wall, yes. So you can't have any new windows there, for example.
Okay.
Right? So if it's already there, you can't open up any windows there. If you do, it has to have like a special like fire shutter or something.
Yeah.
So the way around that we've implemented in some of our designs is that if there's a bedroom on that side or if there's a living room on that side, to get the natural lighting, we'll do like a skylight.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we'll do a skylight to get the natural lighting. So we meet the natural lighting requirements without having a window facing the neighbor's lot line.
Cool.
Okay? If it's facing the main house, then you're okay. And facing the back, you're generally okay. But it's when you're facing your neighbors on the side.
So like a limiting distance thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So existing structure, block or stick frame building. Now, if you go to apply for the same building today, depending on the town, if you don't say it's for a coach house, if it's actually for a garage, are you given a different set of restrictions or are they still the same?
Well, if you're building a garage, then you're not subject to the frost protection requirements.
Okay.
That a actual house would, right? Like so, coach houses you have to comply with the building code. Like these are actual houses. Just they're smaller.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of people confuse them with like tiny houses that you see on TV, like the houses on wheels and things like that. You can't really build that on a proper foundation. Like you have to. I mean, a lot of people have these tiny houses on wheels to get around the building codes. Right. Because it's technically
it's a mobile home. Or something.
Mobile home.
Yeah.
So, but if you're building something on a foundation, everything has to comply. So you see these shows with these tiny houses, and they're cool. Like I love them, right?
Yeah.
But we're not building 150 square foot units. We're building like 5, 6, up to 1,000 square foot units. These are proper smaller houses, right? And you see some of these designs where they have funky stairs going up to these lofts.
Yeah.
And people ask us, can I do that here? I'm like, well, you can't build it and call that a room because that's illegal, right?
Right.
You need railings and all that. Up there. Yeah.
So if you built a garage,
Yep.
and then applied for a permit after, to convert that, does that 5-year rule apply in the same respect as like for a dwelling? Anything after 5 years is a different part of the building code, or how do they see it?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure what their approach is on that because I think the idea is that now that the coach house bylaws have come into play, they want to enable people who have the structures that are already built to have it easier for them. But now that the rules are in place, if you're building something, I think they want you to comply with all the code and bylaw requirements as it is right now. So if you're building something like a garage, and then let's say in 5 years you want to convert it, I'm not sure how they would look at that. Maybe at that time they'll say, well, you know what, you built this after the bylaws are in place. We can't. I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking.
I think there's a lot of kinks to be worked out. Like policy is set from like the provincial government level,
right?
And then it kind of trickles down. But I mean, it's kind of yet to be seen how some of these things actually play out in the real world. Maybe. Is that fair?
Probably, yeah. I think that it's still a big learning curve for a lot of cities. So when we're working with them, there's definitely a lot of learning on their end. Like they're having to clarify with the planning departments. They have to clarify with the different departments like engineering and water and sewer and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you're one of the first ones that did it in Oshawa. I mean, you probably had the most experience.
I did it a little different back at the time because coach houses weren't allowed, right? So I had to do it a little bit differently in terms of site constraints and design and things like that.
Right.
So what are you seeing right now in the market in terms of how people are servicing these? How are they servicing them? Digging up the yard, torpedoes, what's happening?
Yeah. So in terms of servicing, for the most part, most municipalities will want you to utilize the services from the main house.
Okay.
Right. Some will allow you to go under the existing house. Some will require you to, let's say, a Y connection in the front lawn. Right.
Really, like down the driveway kind of thing.
Yeah, down the driveway and connecting it in the front lawn,
okay.
Like your plumbing and drains.
Yep.
And some municipalities will actually allow you to do a road cut and connect directly to the city main.
No way.
Yeah. So Hamilton allows you to do, like, you can connect right to the city main.
So you'd have two connections going into one house.
Yeah.
Or one parcel.
Yeah. So it makes a lot of sense if you have a corner lot.
Yeah.
You have a corner lot, then you have this house on the side and it's accessing the street. And it feels like a separate house.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
I've got a corner lot right now and I'm like, ugh, do I build it? Do I not build it? Do I take the house? I'm kind of in this like in-between zone.
Yeah.
Where a coach house would be ideal because you could keep the house that's there. Build a house behind a house, basically, that's what it is. And you've got, maybe a nice fence in between. Are you seeing that in the market too? Properly fenced off yards and...
I'm not seeing it in the market, but we're encouraging people to do it.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. Like we're thinking really, if we're going to be putting this coach house, how are the occupants of this home going to be interacting with each other? So what we always believe in is creating privacy. If they want to have less privacy, they can choose to. Like they can hang out with their neighbors if they want to. But we want to have those guardrails in place to say, have a fence here. This is kind of your, parcel of amenity space, and you can have a barbecue and you can have your family or friends here, and you don't encroach onto the other unit, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of hard sometimes to tell people, just share the backyard because it can get awkward. So if you have those in place, people will see, this is my outdoor space, and I have a fence here or I have some landscaping to separate this. I think it's more appealing as a rental product.
What makes a good property for a coach house?
Definitely corner lot, as we mentioned. A wide lot, of course. That's going to be good for access, right? During construction, right? You got all these trucks and everything's coming in and out. So, if not possible, a lot of houses, you just have, 4 feet on either side, and you might be able to, get a mini excavator in there or something. But really, all things being equal, wider lots, corner lots, deeper lots, right? If you have a deep lot, then you can really have that separation between the front and the main. And if your house is on a busy street, and you're able to build this coach house deep in the backyard, that could be suitable for a small family because they're not facing the big street, and it's more appealing for them, right?
Yeah. Lot frontage or lot depth? What do you think is more important?
Both are important for different reasons. So
lot
depth,
break it down.
Yeah, so lot depth for what I just mentioned about that privacy and just more space overall, right? And lot width. Just access, cars and servicing and things like that. So during construction, that's important. So try to get both if you can.
That's right.
Try to get deep and wide.
Buy a farm.
Yes, 3 acres at least. No, the idea is that for us to be able to kind of make the best use of every square foot that's available, right? In our urban residential landscape, basically.
Do you think that people, when they're looking at these properties now, if they see the opportunity to say, yes, we can build a coach house, they should just say, yeah, we're just going to go and we're going to try? Or is there some type of a pre-consultation they can do beforehand, or call somebody like yourself to say, hey, this is what I see. Maybe an investor doesn't see it the same way you do. What process would you take if you were a buyer in proceeding with a property, knowing that we might be able to do this in the future?
Right. Yeah. So I encourage everyone to, first of all, try to understand the rules in the municipality that you're working with as much as possible, right? So if you're, investing in Kitchener, or you're investing in Oshawa, or in Hamilton, wherever, depends, if you're starting out. You're starting out, I would say focus on one geographic area, right? Instead of like, I want to know the rules for everywhere, right? Stick to one city. I want to do Hamilton. So what are Hamilton's requirements for parking? What's the requirements for the size of the unit that can build, right? So the more educated you are, the better the better you're going to understand, and the more of a competitive advantage you're going to have when you're going and putting offers where other people are not going to identify those things. You can look at it and you're like, hey, there's that detached garage that is not priced into this sale that I can take advantage of.
Yeah.
Or I can build this coach house that, in this deep backyard that no one's, even considering, right? So really being educated and knowing the rules for that particular city or town is going to be the first most important thing, right? And calling the city or emailing them and asking them questions. A lot of them are very helpful, as you know, right? You send them an email and they'll give you some answers. Sometimes,
yeah.
Sometimes. A lot of them do, but some of them not so much.
Yeah.
And then, after that, really is, they can hire us for consultations and things like that. We can assist them with. In Toronto right now, we're offering free reports for people.
No way.
So if you own a property in Toronto and you email us the address, we'll, within a few days, we'll get you just a kind of overall feasibility of a garden suite on your property, because we are kind of making a big push in Toronto right now.
If somebody was to overly generalize the zoning rules and regulations for a coach house, if you looked up the bylaw for detached garage, would that get you in the ballpark?
Sorry, you mean like if you were in the bylaw document, just look at detached garage?
If you're looking at the zoning bylaw, and let's say some, like for Oshawa, for example, they're not as progressive on the whole coach house thing yet. So you can't actually build a formal coach house in Oshawa in that traditional sense.
Right.
So for that, all you can build is a detached garage, right? So they don't have any bylaws for coach houses yet, but other places do, right? So if somebody was to say, I'm going to look at the detached garage and kind of sort of ballpark my way for maybe in the future of what I could build as an outbuilding,
right?
Would that be a good place to start, or not so much?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be careful with expecting that I'm going to be able to turn this garage into a coach house in the future. I mean, there's a very good chance that could happen, but we don't know what the bylaws are going to look like when they do have the policies in place. So if they want to jump the gun and build it, I would say that, you definitely want to build it. I mean, if it's going to be a garage, it's definitely going to be smaller than the main house, right? The idea is that these are subordinate units. Like, they're not going to be, you don't want to build something equal in size, even if it's a smaller house. Like if you have a 700-800 square foot bungalow, wood frame siding type of bungalow, you still want to build something smaller than that. You don't want to build this coach house that is equal in size, because most cities will say that, the idea is that you're not building another house.
Yes.
You're building just another subordinate unit that would be ideal as an affordable rental unit, or would be ideal, for a family member to be able to live in proximity. That's the goal. So I would say the first criteria would be the size of it, is to make sure that it is kind of smaller, and if it's a garage, I mean, even a 2-car garage is going to be 500, 600 square feet, right? So that seems reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Basements? Are people putting basements in coach houses? Second stories?
Yeah, we are having some where basements are being put in, and generally speaking, putting in basements does not affect the square footage requirements.
Nice.
So we've had people put them in and say, hey, you know what, can I put another unit down here? I'm like, well, you know what, maybe in the future, but slow down. Slow down, make sure it's one unit. You don't want the city, catching you and seeing that you're building 2 units here, right? So, maybe have the basement, if you're excavating anyways, dig out a basement. Worst case scenario, you can use it as a storage, right? Or it can be just a finished family room for somebody, rec room, right?
That's a really good thing for highest and best use of space. If you've got a smaller lot and you're regulated by how big you can build this thing, right? If you go down, well, then you've doubled the footprint of your house, kind of, without doubling the footprint of your house.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and to your other point of second story, same idea. right? So I'll use Toronto as an example. So you're required to build no more than a maximum of 60 square meters, which is roughly 650 square feet.
Yeah.
But you can do a basement. And if you're far enough away from the main house, you can do a second story.
Wow.
So we have a couple clients building garden suites and laneway houses in Toronto where they have 600 square foot basement, 600 square foot main floor, 600 square foot second floor, and they're very creative in their design, and they're building a 3-bedroom home that can rent for $5,000 a month.
Oh,
on a subway line.
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
$5,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. I mean, think about it, right? Like you're building how much does it cost to rent a 3-story home in downtown Toronto on the subway line?
I personally don't know, but $5,000 sounds incredible to me. As a landlord, I don't know. Is that standard rent, or are they doing something?
I mean, I would say that would be a very nice, unique type of property, like a very, a very well designed laneway house that is comparable in size to a lot of the houses there, and it would be brand new and everything, right? But
parking,
I mean,
parking?
No parking. Yeah. I mean, I think having a parking space would be ideal. Like, if somebody has a car, it would be ideal. But I mean, if you just look at, old houses in Toronto that are 3 bedrooms, I mean, they're renting for $4,000 to $5,000, right?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's big rent in the city.
Yeah.
That's big rent. So how do you, as a builder,
yeah,
if we transition from coach houses, basement apartments, all that stuff, looking at zoning bylaws to saying, okay, I want to build something here, right? I think I can do some infill development, or I can rezone or whatever.
Sure.
How are you seeing the transition from something like that to something like this?
Yeah, I mean, it is infill development, which, both you and I have been involved with to a certain level, is a great strategy because, if you have underutilized land that, you're not doing anything else with, you should potentially look at severing. So before you even consider the coach house, you should probably have a look at your portfolio of properties and see if you can sever the land. Because if you can sever the land, the value is going to be a lot higher because now this is a separate property that can be sold separately, and then it's easier for the banks and other institutions and appraisers to kind of value that property, right? So I would say that even though that's probably not going to be many investors, especially if they're newer investors, that would be their first step. They should probably go through do the duplexing and potentially add a coach house. But just looking at that opportunity would be the first thing. Now, the strategy of the infill development is different from the coach house, because the coach house it's within the same property, like the same ownership. You're not able to sever it.
Like one title kind of thing?
Yeah, it's going to be one title. So if you own the whole property and you're renting it out, then it's fine. Whereas with the infill development, you're severing and you're building this new structure. The value is going to be higher, but the cost is also going to be higher, and the risk is also higher as well, right? Because it's not as of right. And for your listeners who may not be familiar with that term, as of right or by right means if it's something that you're doing within the current bylaws. If you do everything within as of right, it means you're doing everything within the bylaws. You don't have to get the approval from the Committee of Adjustments. You don't.
Always better that way. Always better that way if you can.
Yeah, we're both chuckling whenever we say that. But it's true. Like if you don't have to get permission and you don't have neighbors kind of voicing their opinion, it's a lot easier. Whereas if you are doing a severance, for sure there's going to be a minor variance process for what's called a consent application to sever your land. So yeah, because there's more risk, it's higher risk, high reward, right? Like if you're able to build this thing, it's going to be a higher value. Cost is, of course, going to be higher because of the cost. The building is going to be larger, but also there's pretty much full development charges when you're doing an infill development, right? You have to, you're building 2 units or 1 unit or 3 units. You're going to pay accordingly. Whereas when you're building a coach house, it's more of this accessory unit where a lot of the development fees are waived, right? So I wouldn't say one is better than the other. They're just different strategies. I've done both. And it really depends on your experience, your comfort level. And, we've worked on several projects with the infill development. And again, it's great. It is higher risk. And it just depends on what you're comfortable with.
Longer time frame to sever or rezone as opposed to doing an ADU?
Yeah. Yeah. So even rezoning is like, in a lot of cases when you're doing infill development, you don't have to rezone, right? Like you can just keep the same zone. So if you're in an R1 zone and you're want to sever and you just want to build a single family with an accessory suite, you probably don't even have to rezone. But sometimes people might want to, rezone a single family to, let's say, a triplex, right? And then that's a little bit more involved of a process, right? There's more costs associated with that.
Okay, so real world situation. Somebody has the opportunity to build a single family home with a basement apartment and an accessory unit in the backyard, coach house, what have you, to give you a total of 3 units versus purpose-built triplex on the same property. Which would you go with and why?
Ooh, that's really tough. It's going to depend really on the ratio of land value versus the structure.
Okay.
Right? So a mentor of mine informed me once, a kind of a good rule of thumb is in many of the cities and towns outside of Toronto, a good rule of thumb is that the land value is 25 to like 30% of the value of the property, and the structure is the rest of it, right? Which is whatever, 60%, 70%. So you really have to kind of look at, if I'm going to, tear the structure down and build something new, what costs am I incurring and what value am I losing? Right. And so we talk a lot about the, when we were doing the infill training, we talk about the keep and sever strategy, which is keep the existing property, sever it, and then build something else. Because if you keep that existing property, you can still obtain rent, you can still, easier for financing. Whereas if you tear it down, you're going to be limited in terms of your financing options, right? So for a lot of starter investors, the keep and sever strategy is a lot better. Right. But tearing down and building, it's not to say that that doesn't work, but it's you have to have better, you have to have deeper pockets, basically.
Sure.
You need better financing options, right? And a lot of people do that. A lot of people will buy a bungalow in Toronto for $1 million. They'll tear it down.
Isn't that crazy?
And they'll build they'll spend $1 million building a custom home. Yeah. And then now it's $3 million.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like $1 million in under a year.
Yeah.
So if you can do that, more power to you, and it's great. But it's challenging for a lot of people, especially if you're starting out. So I would say you have to run the pro formas. And some people approach me and say, hey, you know what, Andy, I have this old house here. I want to tear it down and I want to build a triplex. I say, great. Have you run the numbers yet? Because you're removing this house, which itself intrinsically have, at least $200,000 in value. And now you have to make it back in your build. Yep. Right? Which is going to be tough. So you really have to run the numbers.
Do you think that's what people are missing right now? Social media, everything's like fun and flashy and you're a builder and all this stuff. Things are happening, right? But people aren't doing the math properly. Do you think that that's happening, or do you think people are generally on the right track?
I mean, there's a bit of both. There's everything. And I really would caution people to not, jump towards things that are just, it looks sexy, right? Like, it's like, when you see, social media is definitely a cause of it. Like when you see, people that are, doing multi-units and apartment buildings, and it seems all cool and everything, but it's just like, do you know what the numbers are? What percentage equity do they have involved in it? And, what kind of risk are they taking? Yeah. So as someone who's actually kind of gone through that process where, I've looked at investing in multiple units, and I'm a small shareholder in one large project where it's just like, I don't know what the numbers look like. And it's scary to me, even as a small kind of owner in that project where it's like, 30 units and things like that. And I just look at it and say, I can work on a smaller project with a second suite and a garden suite, and I know the numbers. And I can use that same formula and I can just scale it in multiple places. So I'll still make, possibly more money than working on a big project, right? And I know the numbers now. Whereas some people might just get caught up in that. It's like, hey, you know what? I want to start doing big things. And
bigger's better kind of thing.
Bigger's better. So again, not to say that there's anything wrong with that or it's not profitable, but sometimes maybe you can just kind of look literally right in your backyard and see if you can add value there. Yeah. And we get caught up in that, like, that bigger thing, it's sexy and it's like, I want to get involved in that. I personally know developers who do big projects but they say, you know what, it's so scary because they're like, Andy, it's 5 years, it's feast or famine. I don't know what this project is going to be looking like. Yeah. And meanwhile, they have duplexes on the side.
Yeah.
They're like, they have little flip projects and duplexes because it's like they know that money is going to keep coming in.
Yeah.
And they can run those numbers very easily. And, the single family home, that's such a, that product has such liquidity. Like you can sell it in any time, right? There's such a huge pool of buyers for it. So, think big, but at the same time, just see what can you do without going too crazy, especially when you're starting out.
I had a coach one time and he said something very similar. He was like, you can go catch a bunch of rabbits or you can try to catch an elephant. Like which one you both could get you to the same end result.
100%.
Right? Just,
100%.
You could do little bite-sized pieces or you could go something huge.
Yeah.
Man, can you imagine 5 to 7 years projecting out into the future for a bigger building? It's incredible.
It's scary.
It is scary.
It's scary. Yeah. Like, especially like, if you need the money and you have a family and stuff like that. Like, we hear about those cool stories of people making it, but how many other ones where it's like,
there's some
skeletons
skeletons of graveyards, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's probably graveyards full of people that, went really big and then, they went bankrupt and it really hurt them. Right. So there's no need to do that.
How do you hedge in this market? Knowing that the trend is down right now. How do you hedge?
Right. How do I hedge? Really focusing on, what value I can provide in my business, right? Because that's income.
Interesting.
So, if you have a job, that's great. I think income is incredibly important. So,
income's good, yeah.
yeah. Having income, I think that's the key thing. So whether it's a business income or whether it's a job, having that, and how can you provide value in that income role, whether you own a business or whether you are an employee. Like how can you increase your income in that capacity, and then that allows you to have the cash to take advantage of the opportunities when they do come. Right.
Where do you spend more of your time? On the business side of things, small business like income, or on the equity side of things with the real estate?
I would say right now would probably be the business side, right, and learning from other business owners, how can I just create more value and create a product or service that people want to buy that helps them and increases value for them. So I'm really just learning a lot of those business things. Whereas I think when I first started in the business, I just kind of did it. I saw the demand. I met people's expectations in terms of what was done, but I didn't really look at it from how can I create a tremendous amount of value. So the focus right now is creating products and services, whether it's business to consumer or business to business, that creates a tremendous amount of value for them, whether it's a property that they own or whether they want to run a business themselves.
That's cool. That's very cool. Thank you for coming today. This has been so good. This is a huge eye opener. Infill development, coach houses. I can tell as we start to speak about some of these things, and the whole conversation has unfolded today. For anybody watching this on video, you totally light up when you talk about this, and you're really smooth and you know your stuff. And it's been a joy to have you here today. So
thank you, Ryan. I'm accused of rambling on about this. I can literally talk about this stuff forever, but I really appreciate you kind of indulging me.
Where can people find out more about you?
It's my website, suiteadditions.com. There are some free guides that people can download to learn more about this stuff. We also have a YouTube channel where we try to consistently put out some content on projects that we're working on, insights that we're seeing even in the market where we think things are headed. And really it's just a lot of it is just me sharing my opinion, so you got to take it with a big grain of salt.
That's great. Who else would be a good guest for the show?
What's that?
Anybody else with big opinions that would be a good guest for the show?
Oh man, I mean, you should probably try to reach out to Tom at Rockstar, because he's really good in terms of kind of understanding the macro landscape. And I've listened to his stuff for like over a decade, and a lot of it has kind of transpired.
They just had a big meeting. It was 1,000 people or something.
Yeah. It was Saturday. It was like 1,000 people. So I really enjoy his macro outlook, and his approach is always like, hey, I'm not the expert, but this is what I see, and this is what I'm doing, and this is how I'm approaching it for my family. Because ultimately, no matter what experts say out there, you have to take all this information and you have to make a decision for yourself and for your family, right? We can't just rely on anyone. And so that's really what resonated with me. And even with me sharing my opinions on, my business and what I see in terms of the market, it's really everything that I'm doing for myself and for my family, right? Sure. So I'm just sharing that out there. You can take any of it if you want to, or none of it at all. I just want to put it out there, and hopefully it'll help some people.
Awesome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan.
All right. You heard it from the man, Andy Tran. Thanks again for listening to the Highest and Best Use Real Estate Podcast. Don't forget to sign up to the book at thehighestandbestuse.com. I'm Ryan Carr, reminding you that good deals are found, great deals are created. Like, share, follow, and subscribe. We'll see you on the next episode.